All right, so last week we talked about methods and calculations for health metrics. This week we'll look at these metrics components. Specifically, we're going to look at the components we need to build up to calculating DALYs. These include life expectancy, mortality rates, the concepts of incidence and prevalence, as well as disability rates. We started the chapter started with a discussion of cause-specific or population-wide metrics. We use our metric components to build up to the analysis. We have variations that are for cause-specific. For instance, mortality rate of like lung cancer, and we have variations of metrics that are population-wide, like global health metrics or life expectancy at that level. Beyond that, there are many factors we can include given the appropriate granularity of data. So including age, sex, disease, location, point in time versus cumulative analysis. So we'll start with life tables and life expectancy, and the motivation behind this is that we're trying to build up as I was saying, to build to calculating DALYs. So we're starting with life expectancy, which we can use to calculate years of life lost. So we want to use the expected life remaining at age X rather than the life expectancy at birth. And we can do that using these life tables. So for this slide, I have a sample of the data from the GHO life tables. I selected several columns to illustrate the calculations on the next slide. So you'll see I have age, LX, NL, and capital LX, TX, and EX. So in the life expectancy calculation, we have EX equals TX over LX. And one thing that I was struggling with looking at just the text was understanding that TX is the total number of person lives lived by a cohort from age X until all members have died. So looking back at the previous slide, that's going from, for instance, if we're looking at the age 20 to 24, we're looking at this number 453,499 all the way to the bottom, and that gets summed up into TX. And then we divide that by LX to get the expected life remaining, yeah. So then in the exercise, we're given TX and we're given LX, and we just divide one by the other to get EX is 26.4 years in that case. So next we look at mortality rate, as it's another component we need to calculate years of life lost. The most common version of this metric is the crude mortality rate, which is given there. There are several other types of mortality rates that are used for specific purposes, including age-specific, cause-specific, infant, and maternal mortality rates. The book shows an example of simulating different values for a range of mortality rates to estimate deaths, which was, yeah. So then we talk about incidence and prevalence. So incidence is the number of cases developed during a specific time period. These are new cases during that time period, whereas prevalence is the number of cases in the population. So it's new and existing cases in the in that time period. Prevalence is used to measure the current impact of the disease or disability. In the book, there are two examples. The first one calculates years of life with disability using prevalence, and the second simulates incidence and prevalence using Poisson distributions to model the new cases and the recovered cases in a COVID-19 simulation. We've already covered disability rates a bit in previous chapters. In the previous chapter, but to remind us, 1 is equivalent to death, and 0 is no disability. So there are different methods to compute or assign that weight. The one that I remember was given was analytical hierarchy, which is given during in the book. But the source that we have in this book is the Global Burden of Disease Study, which has a pretty extensive set of disability weights, and we have these weights available in here. And here is just an example of selecting out one of those disability weights from the data set. Finally, we have a summary of the DALY's components. So we have YLLs, which are years of life lost. So obviously we have age at death, life expectancy, standard life expectancy, and population size and cause of death as contributors for that component. And then we have years of life with disability, which includes calculating based on prevalence or incidence, disability weights, the age, the population size, and the duration of disability. And then to calculate DALYs, we are summing up both of those. And at this point, I've opened it to more discussion for the chapter.
I do have a question about prevalence measures, and there's point prevalence and period prevalence, and I'm wondering, is there a way when would you use one over the other? Is it just availability of data, or is there a kind of a rule around when you might prefer to use a point prevalence over a period prevalence based on disease type or whatever it is?
So when we're saying point prevalence, is that are we saying, like, is that equivalent to incidence then?
No, it's new and existing case, so it's like a prevalence measure, but it's you take it on a certain period, a point in time, like a particular day. And period is over maybe a year or 2 years or several months or something. And it's something I've come across before, and I'm not clear on where and how you might use a point prevalence versus a period prevalence.
I'm also not sure, so that would be.
Oh, I don't mean to ask these difficult questions. It's just something that's happened, like when would you use one over the other? When would you prefer to pick one? Don't know.
We think of um, what each one of them means. So point prevalence, what are we measuring? We're measuring a specific point in time, how many people had a disease. And period prevalence, where we would be calculating that over a period. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Might be it's depending on the type of analysis that you are doing. As Peter said, most probably is a focus on a specific point in time when you look at impact of a disease on a specific point in time, and you like frame the time to a specific point. So you say the prevalence at this point in time is certain level, and you use that level to make your analysis. Different is that if you want to look at a time frame, it depends by your the research, the question that you are answering, or what are you aim to achieve, find out. So if you are looking at a specific time frame, so then might be worth it to identify in the prevalence number within that time frame.
Okay. So would it, for example, something like heart attack, if you wanted to understand a heart attack, you might look at a specific day of cases in hospitals, for example, admissions for heart attacks versus a condition like, I don't know, some kind of inflammatory bowel disease, where you want to understand across a population over like more of a period of time because it's a chronic condition. And you might want to understand something about that, about the impact on life living with a chronic condition, as opposed to something that could happen suddenly, like a heart attack. So you might prefer to then look at admissions into hospital for heart attacks versus people living with a condition within a given year, how many new cases and how many existing cases. Is that something that would help decide, whether to use one over the other, the nature of the condition?
When you look at the prevalence are the number of existing cases. So the number of cases within a certain population, so the number of heart attacks within a certain population, and they are prevalent, so they are ongoing at a specific point in time. And so obviously it depends by the type of condition. Even you might want to think about that, but might be worth it to have a look at a range of the time frame. So within a certain range of time, what are the or how the prevalence changes along the time, along this time frame. And yeah, obviously it depends by the type of condition, because having a heart attack, it's different than like an infectious diseases that lasts for at least 5 days or for 15 days and something. So even the duration of the condition might affect somehow the prevalence, because times can overlap within different people. So they do like sort of average value to establish the prevalence of within a certain time frame or in a specific point in time, because of the condition. But an heart attack appears just suddenly on a day, and that's it. So it might be, obviously think about the type of condition.
Okay, thank you.
And I was thinking also that, you know, things that have a higher like mortality rate may contribute more to YLOs than YLDs. With the heart attack example. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I need to go away and do a lot more reading into the calculations behind it, because I think the CDC, I don't know if it still does at the moment, but it used to have quite a lot of really helpful guidance on the different calculations and different kinds of conditions. And it's because I've had to use it in the past, not to calculate it, but to work with data that have been created for chronic conditions. It's kind of understanding when you might use one over the other, and I guess the being driven by the research question and how these other metrics, you know, how you can use them in the right way to be able to, you know, create insights into conditions that are actually reliable, that you can use, that are good, you know, estimates of things. But I thought the chapter was really good. It's helpful to kind of dig into some of the calculations and things behind them, and where to get the data from, and how to best use it. So that was really good, very helpful. But I think I need to go back over this chapter again. I went through it earlier in the week, and I think just have another go through it and try some additional calculations and go through the exercises with different conditions and see what happens.
I also would like to go through the examples again. In particular, try to do like the German lung cancer at the end with a different disease or a different region possible. That'd be
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It helps to practice and to become more familiar with the numbers and what you're seeing, and does it make sense, and then, you know, compare. I think for, you know, if you want to be able to build, you know, certainly with the later chapters on things like machine learning and more advanced stuff, I think, you know, getting a good grasp of these kinds of things can be, you know, essential to improve understanding later on. I think it's a really nice chapter. I do need to come back to it. But thanks for your presentation.
what other questions do we have after this chapter?
I'm not sure if you find it useful, because I've also put this different type of in the understanding that counts and mortality rates, because everything that get into the calculations of the components, so the calculation of the metrics, and so the components are key to influence the final result of the number of years and things. So a closer look at the components, and so my influence the final number that you calculate. And so if you use certain type of mortality rate, and even if it's just as the same as we discussed about the prevalence at first point in time of or within a time range, as well as the same thought would be for the mortality rates, and so for the life expectancy and all the other components of the metrics. Yeah.
So in terms of, oh, I remember a question. So in terms of disability weights, in this book, are we mostly using, like, are there multiple sets of disability weights in that we're using, or? Because this is the one that is in the chapter, right? This that, like, do we have more granularity? Is there some tables within the package that has more granularity?
No.
No.
No, you have to just this levels of for of disabilities because they are splitting not only for a condition but even for middle conditions, so like morbidities and things. So they might change, the level of the weight might change if one condition is affected by other conditions. So there is more than one condition that happen to an individual. So if you want to think about you know, a stroke, for example, then you need to consider other things. And here is like a simplified version, and you have the upper and the lower bounds of specific weights. Something else to say is that the number of years of life lost are now calculated with prevalence, but before they used to be calculated with incidence. But then along the time, within the research, they found out that using the prevalence, it's like giving a better picture of what actually happening And so here I put then in a difference within the two things, and we saw it in the previous chapter as well, and here basically a bit more explanation about the two. Yeah. Yeah, this chapter seems like quite straightforward, but the components are fairly important. So, and there is something in the appendix as well about the components. So a bit more things on the life expectancies and a bit of history of the table and things. So next, I think is I don't know if you have any other questions about this chapter that we want to discuss about.
I don't have any more questions at the moment. I think because I've been through it once, I think going through it again and trying some more examples, and because I do spend time going back to the GBD website as well and looking up additional data. So I take my time on it to try and understand it well, but I don't have anything else at the moment.
Yeah, in the GBD, if you look at the latest study now, is we are ongoing the 2023 reviews of the so the next release of the metrics updates. But there is within the previous studies, even like the 2021, for example, the latest one available on the website. If you check the methods, obviously, of the calculation, they do a thorough explanation how they calculated and which type of metrics and metrics components they use, like in terms of type of prevalence and disability weights, along with all the mathematical formulations and things. So that you find lots of the basics of the foundation of the latest metrics that have been released.
Yeah, it's a fantastic website. We've recently started looking at it from looking at the visualization tools that you can use that exists, and it's just absolutely marvelous. I mean, you could lose hours of your life just poking at the visuals, and also, the fact that you've got fact sheets. So if you want to understand why a certain condition has been placed within a certain category, going into the fact sheets that explains why it's been put there, and some of the kind of approaches to calculating incidence and prevalence of different conditions, and it's really quite a remarkable resource. And I think for me, I've only just recently become introduced to it through a training course I'm doing, so there's just so much information there that's absolutely brilliant. I definitely like having a look into the calculations behind it, because it kind of helps if you want to design your own study, using these kinds of materials and looking at these other approaches and the methods behind them, I think is really helpful, because I'm still quite new to working with health data and getting used to the sorts of metrics and statistics that are commonly used and how they're created is, you know, it's an ongoing journey, but it's fun, it's fascinating. And I do like the visualization side of things. It's a really powerful tool, I think, to tell, you know, share information.
Just looking at this, after we started talking about it, the PPP website. I might play with it for a little while.
The Viz, I think it's VizHub. I think the visualization is done with D3, and it's such a fantastic set of resources for having a quick look at globally or even at a particular continent or country, and doing population comparisons. I mean, there's just so much there that you can, I mean, just an absolute treasure trove of information about health and disease and injuries and all sorts of different things that I think is incredibly useful. And then you can find the metrics and all the data, all the details behind it. I mean, the fact that there's a bunch of people putting this information together out there, making it available and doing what they've done, it's a really impressive resource, actually. Highly recommend it. And there are other tools, I think, national tools that we've been looking at too, in the UK and because of, you know, working in a local authority. But I mean, the fact that this exists globally is absolutely brilliant.
Here you can see that there is methods appendix, and within the appendix overview, you can find different type of the composition of the components used to calculate the latest metrics. This in the chat as well for you too, if you are interested in having a look at that.
Just looking at the code section,
Just jump there, too.
absolutely amazing. I know, just went straight to the code. It's absolutely phenomenal. This is incredible.
And there is the method section as well as the appendix as well, so that allowed you to find out the formulation they use. So
Yeah, this is fantastic. I think I'm going to be spending quite a lot more time just having these flow charts, the way, you know, putting together flow charts of estimating prevalence and things like that, just all the different data that have gone into some of these specific conditions and different models is really, gosh, it's incredible. Like, you know, just the brain power that sits behind all of this information is really impressive. Well, that's great. I know what I'm going to be doing this weekend.
okay, so
Well,
next, yeah.
Yep.
No, I wanted to have a quick look at the how we are. Can you open up the Excel sheet for the presentations? So for booking. Next week there is no sign up for the next chapter, so I'm not sure if it's so I might do that in case no one signs up. for next Friday.
Yeah,
And
I'm not sure I'll be able to make it in time for the start because I have an appointment, so I might be a bit late next week.
okay.
I will do my best. Because I do enjoy these discussions. I think it's really interesting, and but I
Yeah.
just might be a bit late, just so you know.
And even for the machine for the following chapter as well. So I don't know if any of you would like to think about doing the chapter 6, introduction to machine learning, which is quite straightforward. So especially
I think I did, but I got quite terrified of it. Machine
Oh.
learning for the terrified.
No, it's just the very kickstart of modeling. So what is model and things? So nothing. And then an explanation what is machine learning.
Yeah, I'll
then-
have a look. I'll have a look and I will read through it. I might put my name in there and see, but I can try.
Yeah, sure.
I can learn
Yeah.
something along the way. But I do tend to go into rabbit holes with things and start pulling out all sorts of tangents. So I need to be careful to, stay focused.
Okay.
Cool.
So let's I'll put something in the Slack channel about next week. See if anyone else would be available for the chapter. If we want to like skip this the next week and jump on the following one. We will see what's gonna happen next week.
Okay. Cool.
Cool.
All right.
Bye everyone.
Nice to see you again. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Federica.